I separated from my husband twice when the kids were little. I work with couples to save their marriages, and here I was about to file for divorce. It was very humbling, to say the least. We kept making promises to make changes. We tried to fix things, but we just couldn't do it when it really counted. And so I thought that I should go, but I knew that my side of the street was not clean. So I gave myself 1 year to try something that I had never tried before. And that was, I was going to fix my marriage. It was really about, I want to clean up my side of the street for the next year. And I focused on that and I made that decision. He didn't even know that I was doing it. And so what happened next, when I think back on it, it really still feels like a miracle to me when I think about where we are now and where we were back then. So if you're watching this and if you're in a similar situation where you've tried counseling, you've tried talking, you've tried all the books and the videos, and maybe you're starting to wonder if you're wasting more time on something that's already too late. But before you decide that, I want to ask the question, what if the problem isn't that your marriage can't be transformed? What if it's that you've been trying to save it the wrong way? So today I'm going to share exactly how I transformed my marriage from constant conflict or emotional disconnect to now feeling like we're best friends and soulmates and grateful every single day for what we have, without his buy-in, without him participating, without him even knowing what my thought process was. So here are the 3 core areas that I focused on that became the catalyst for growth that we both went through together, but I started. And here's what's wild is that he would give me credit for going first after a few months of watching me and observing me and being sort of surprised because I was doing some things that were out of the norm and we didn't really talk about it. He got inspired and wanted to level up himself. And I didn't try to save my marriage because I believed it would work. I didn't think it was possible, but I did it because I wanted to be able to look my kids in the eye when I left and say, I did everything that I could, because that's really what I thought was going to happen. So I gave myself a year. And like I said, my kids were little and I thought I'm going to show up the way that I feel good about myself, no matter what. And in a year when nothing's changed, because I know nothing will actually change, I'll be able to walk away with my head held high, knowing I did everything that I could. And that's how close I was to actually leaving. So if you're in that place right now where maybe you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, or you're exhausted, maybe you've tried everything, I'm really hoping that you're going to find some hope and some strength in my personal share, because I know that if I can do it, as long as you're not dealing with preconditions, I believe that you can do it too. Trust me, like it was rough. And so much of what I learned came from the paradox that I'm a therapist and a marriage therapist at that, and I still couldn't make my own marriage work. I could teach other people how to have great relationships. I could hone in on the dynamics. I could figure out what was going on pretty quickly. I could really support people. I could catalyze transformation, but I could not integrate that knowledge into actually having a great marriage myself. And that was really beyond frustrating. I kept giving my husband books to read. I kept trying to get him to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about, the concepts that I was learning, the tools I was learning. I was really trying to pull him over to where I was, but I didn't have the credibility with him because I wasn't holding up my end either. I was toxic. Like I was losing my shit on a regular basis. And I'm ashamed when I think about my behaviors back then. So when I tell you that these 3 things worked, I'm not speaking from theory. I'm speaking from the trenches of my own personal failures. So when I gave myself that year, I knew I had to do something radically different than what I've been doing before. And this is what it was. So the very first shift that I made, the one that really set everything else in motion, was this. I stopped focusing on what he needed to change, what he was doing, what he wasn't doing. And I started focusing only on what I can control. I had really spent years up to this point trying to get him to see things my way, to look at things the way I wanted him to look at them, to change his mind, to change his perspective, and to get him to care about the things that I cared about in the same way that I cared about them. And at this point, when I made this decision, I just stopped. It was like cold turkey. And that's when everything changed. And I said the serenity prayer every single day. So if you don't know what the serenity prayer is, it's really short. It's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And basically the idea is that you're going to put all of your energy, your mental energy, your physical energy, all of your emotional bandwidth into the things that you can control and let go of the things that you can't. It sounds really simple, but it's extremely profound. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. And I had to ask myself, so what do I want? And what can I control about creating that? So I was always in this, like, this is what I want. This is what I desire. This is the direction I'm moving. What can I control about that? And what can I not control about that? And I had to answer that for myself, if not multiple times a day. And that question forced me to get really brutally honest about what was actually within my power, which was so much less than I even thought. Like, this was not a new concept for me, focus on what you can control. This is not something that I had never thought of, but it was a very different thing to actually live it. And I didn't like it. But here's what it looked like in real life. If after really thinking about what does it look like to live this serenity prayer? How do I implement this? And as an example, this is just one example, but I'm really sensitive to my environment. So I wanted the house to be at a certain level of tidiness and order. And my husband's threshold for getting irritated by disorder was a lot higher than mine. And so he didn't mind if the kids' shoes or the kids' backpacks were laying in the entryway, whereas that would really bug me. It was something that I cared about. It wasn't his need, it was my need. And so instead of spending more time trying to convince him to care about it as much as I did and explain to him why this mattered and why he should do it, I just took on the things that mattered the most. So like if we had an agreement and then he didn't follow through on it because he thought, you know what, there were other more important things, I didn't want to accept that because for me, it was the most important thing. And when I realized like that's not something I can control. And if I'm really going to let that go, I have to make it happen for myself. If it really affects my well-being that much, I need to take ownership over that. So we divided tasks in a way where I took the things that mattered the most to me and he took the things that were like, if it didn't happen, it wasn't going to be the end of the world. It wasn't going to be a high stakes thing. And here's the key is I had to do that without resentment. This was the hard part because the moment that you take something on your plate and something that you think is unfair and you do it while you're still feeling like a martyr, you're still trying to control the other person unconsciously because you're still making it about them. That forced me to do was let go of the things that I didn't actually need. I had to ask myself, what is a nice to have and what is a must have for myself? What is a must have for me to feel okay in my environment? What is a must have for me to feel healthy and grounded and well and at my best, right? Because parenting young kids and working full time, it takes a lot of energy, right? So I had to get really lean about what am I spending my energy on and what am I going to let go of? And where can I decide to just feel good even though things aren't the way that I want them to be? And there were so many things that I was holding on to that just didn't matter. That was the first thing. So there are some things that really did matter that I had to fully own and take that on my plate without resentment. But then also there were so many things that I realized I could let go of them that would give me the bandwidth to take ownership of what did matter without being on this emotional roller coaster. If he does something, great. If he doesn't do something, I'm okay. Or if he doesn't do something, I'm upset in the old way. But in the new way, it was like, I'm okay no matter what, because I've owned what matters most. I've let go of the rest and I'm detaching from outcome and I'm just focusing on me. But the old way was if he did it the way I wanted him to do it, I would be happy. If he didn't, I would be unhappy. It was like just handing away my power every single day. And that was something that felt really empowering to get rid of. And what I learned from all of that, this was like a daily spiritual practice. I learned that I have so much more power on my side of the street than I thought that I did, but I couldn't see it at first because I was so focused on what he was doing. When you're outside in, you don't see the power that you have. This was an inner game every single day. I didn't know what it looked like at first. What does it look like to let go of the things you can't control? I was worried that I was going to be compromising myself. How do I let go of the things that I can't control without feeling like a doormat, without giving up on the things that matter most to me? But the more that I practiced it, the more that I realized this isn't about being small. This isn't about compromising myself. This is actually about being really powerful within the realm of how life actually works. The only realm that you feel like you're not powerful in when you let go of the things that you actually can't control is in a delusional state. Like you have to be delusional if you think that you can control all these things that you really can't control. And that was a big wake up call for me. Now, once I started getting my energy back on my side of the street, something became really clear for me. We had this pattern in our relationship that was really eroding our connection. We still loved each other, but it was harder and harder to come back to that. And I was participating in this dynamic more than I realized. So the next shift I had to make was learning how to hold boundaries for around repair without fighting him for it. So I stopped chasing my husband for repair. I stopped doing the emotional labor for both of us. And when I did that, he actually started showing up. So Dr. Sue Johnson, who wrote the book Hold Me Tight, she talks about this pattern she calls demand and withdraw. And it's where one partner pursues connection and repair while the other distances. And I was definitely the pursuer and my husband was more of the distancer. And she says that breaking the cycle requires the pursuing partner to stop over functioning and allow space for the other partner to feel their own need for connection, which will drive their behavior, which will drive their motivation to meet you where you're at. Not your needs for connection and not your plowing across that divide between the two of you so that they can't even feel their own connection needs. Here's what I mean by holding boundaries around repair. If something happened that hurt my feelings, or if my husband responded in a way that was passive aggressive, or if he breached our connection in some way, I would come to him with an attempt to repair. One time, I would let him know the meaning that I gave it. I would let him know how it made me feel. I would let him know what I needed to feel better in the moment that he could give me in the present moment. And then this is the part that changed everything, which is that if I didn't feel heard and then I felt even more disconnected, I didn't pretend like we were connected or good. And I also didn't get angry and continue to pound on a door that wasn't opening. I didn't do the work for both of us just so that I could get my attachment needs met and get back into connection. I would just say, look, I accept that this is what you're not able to give me right now, and I accept that we're not repaired. And then I would stay in my lane. I wouldn't initiate bids for connection because that would be incongruent with how I was really feeling on the inside. And that was the doormat piece that I was struggling with. No, if I'm still honoring myself, then I don't betray myself by pretending like things are fine or ignoring what I need in order to preserve the connection, because we have to try to find a balance between authenticity and connection. I wouldn't try to force quality time, and I wasn't going to act like everything was fine when it wasn't. Now, this does not mean that I acted out. And it doesn't mean that I retaliated. It doesn't mean that I made him pay for it by withdrawing or being passive aggressive or being cold. I was still respectful. I was still reasonable, but I kept my distance. And I let him know, look, we're not on great terms. I'm not mad at you, but we're not on good terms. I just didn't get the repair that I needed, and so we're not repaired. I let be what was. This is where we're at. And it's not up to me. If I'm really in my lane, I can't fix what you broke. Even if it's just on a micro level. When I talk about broken, I'm just talking about if a connection is breached, and this happens in relationships. We're not in perfect harmony at all times. There's going to be things that happen where you hurt each other's feelings, or there's things where there's a disconnect. And if you're not in a codependent place, whoever was the one, this is why boundaries are so important. You have to know whose it is, who's the one that broke the connection. Whoever broke the connection is the only one that can fix it. When I stopped overfunctioning, it was clear on whose side of the street it was on. The hard part of that was just allowing there to be that disconnect. And I had to forego my own needs for closeness. I had to sit with the discomfort of not being connected to him. And that was hard for me because every part of me wanted to go fight him for the repair, or to get mad at him for not giving it to me, or for just giving up and doing the heavy lifting so that we could be close again. But I didn't do that. And so I would go for a long time with feeling disconnected, but the self-honoring piece and the staying in my own lane and not acting stuff out was more important to me at that time. And what happened was he started to get in touch with his own attachment needs. He started to realize, like, I miss her. I want to be on good terms with her. I want to have fun with her. I want to feel good. And because I wasn't forcing it, because I wasn't making him repair just to stay out of trouble with me, he wanted to repair because he wanted to be close to me. And it removed the power struggle entirely. So that was a big game changer for us. And that's the key. When you hold a boundary like this, you're not punishing your spouse. You're not withholding. You're not acting out. You're just being honest and congruent. This is where we are right now. And I trust you to find your way back to me when you're ready. And it was a power that I felt in that moment that I had never had before. And if you're with somebody who ultimately does want a good relationship with you, they will find a way if you hold that boundary in a loving way, as long as you're not with somebody who has a precondition. Now, before I get into what changed next, I want to just pause for a second, because some of you listening, you might feel like you're carrying your relationship alone or trying to fight for it by yourself. So if what I've shared really resonates and you want to get help around this, Danielle is going to drop a link below. It's basically a free call to talk to us, to explore your dynamics and see if we can apply some of these principles to your unique situation and give you a roadmap to executing on these ideas in your own relationship, because there is a specific order that you need to go in for this to work. I know you might have heard me say in the past that don't start with communication. We have to start emotional connection first. But before that, even, we need to have a really clear understanding of what boundaries are. So if you're interested in talking with us, it's a free, no obligation call. Just check the link below. I can't remember what the link is off the top of my head, but have a look in the comments below. So coming back to my story, I think where things really started to shift in a lasting way, and the sort of final turning point for us, is when I realized something deeper was happening underneath all of this. And yes, I was focusing on what I could control and letting go of what I couldn't control. I was better at holding boundaries, but I was still bringing the same emotional energy that I had before into the relationship. And that's when I understood from the work that I had done intellectually, but not really applied to myself. The next thing was I had to do the daily inner work to change my own emotional states, to change my own limiting beliefs, to change my own energy that I brought into every interaction. And the real work that I had to do wasn't just in how I responded to him, what I said or what I didn't say. It was in how I was showing up within myself, my relationship with myself. So when I stopped controlling him and started controlling the only thing that I actually could, which is myself, it took about 6 months before he got really inspired to join me in that. Eckhart Tolle, if you've heard of him, he talks about this in The Power of Now. He says the moment that you start watching the thinker or observing yourself, separating the part of you that is identified with the experience you're having from the part of you that is observing the experience that you're having, a higher level of of consciousness becomes activated. And that's what I had to learn to do, is I had to step back from my automatic reactions that were usually just an emotional default and actually witness what was happening inside of me. That's the inner work piece. That's the part that is really a lifelong practice, but this was the turning point for me. And I think it's the part that most people skip because it's certainly not sexy. It's not easy and quick. It's not fun. And it doesn't really just give you a formula that you can apply to your spouse, but it is the foundation for everything else. So I had to do daily mindset work. I had to change my beliefs at the subconscious level. I had to look at my own triggers and ask, why am I feeling this way? Why am I reacting this way? What am I making this mean? What else could it mean? And what old story am I running that's keeping me stuck that I can really let go of if I think about it? Now, meditating really helped me a lot with this. It allowed me to come forward to him with a much softer vibe. And I use soft startup. If you know John Gottman's work, he talks about this. It's the idea that you approach a difficult conversation without blame, with softness, without criticism, just coming forward with curiosity. It's like an energy that's neutral as opposed to an activated charge that you come to them with. That's always going to be activating to them as well. And so soft startup is like coming forward without making the other person wrong. You just state your experience and your need is basically how that works. And from that, I was able to be more vulnerable. I was able to ask him for something that I wanted while still giving him the chance to say no. I honored him to be a grown man and decide how he wanted to show up. And I allowed him to disappoint me if that's what he chose to do. If there was something really important to him that was more important and I was disappointed as a result, I allowed that. And when I say I allowed that, it's not like I could have stopped it. I mean, I allowed it in the sense that I didn't make it mean anything bad about me or the relationship. I didn't retaliate or have that be a source of contention. And because I didn't make him pay for it, and I would just like let him feel the outcome of his choices, which is really hard for a codependent, he really started to think about how he wanted to be, right? He started to realize, I don't want to be the guy that always says no. I don't want to be the husband that doesn't care about my wife's feelings. I want to be someone who's generous and loving and curious and empathetic. I want to be a stand-up guy for me, not for somebody else, and not to stay out of trouble or to prove anything, but because these are my values. And that was the shift where he was doing it for himself and not just to keep me happy. That's when real transformation started, because I wasn't trying to control the narrative. I wasn't trying to lead him into a different direction. I was just showing up as my best self, hour to hour, day to day. And that made him want to make it work with me. And that's when he started to join in the efforts. And that's why I think mistimed readiness doesn't have to stop us. Because I think on some level, he knew if he didn't join me where I was, if he just continued to be the way that he had been and engaging some of the dysfunctional mechanisms that he had not cleaned up yet, and he witnessed me cleaning up mine, he could see that I was leveling up, that I was growing in confidence, I was growing in strength and growing in grace, that we would not grow together if he didn't also grow too. And I think he realized he did really want to be with me, that I was raising my value. He saw that. And he wanted to embrace that. And so that's what this third point is about. It's about becoming someone that your spouse wants to rise up to meet. And it starts with you being the best person according to your values. You don't want to do this from an outside in perspective, but it usually happens like that. If there's real love between you and you're showing up according to your highest values, you're going to be somebody that they want to rise up to meet. Not by manipulating them, not by making them feel bad, but by genuinely leveling up yourself from the inside out. By doing the inner work, by managing your own triggers, by showing up in a soft, vulnerable, but very clear and powerful way at the same time. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking that you want to do this too, but you don't know where to start, I get it. It's not very intuitive. And to me, I almost kind of discovered it by accident in a way, but because it goes against every instinct that you have when you're in pain and when you're struggling and when you want your spouse to change. But I did create a masterclass a while ago, and some of you have seen this already, where I walk you through these principles in much more depth and I give you the exact framework that I use to transform my marriage. There's a couple other things that I'm not even getting into today that are in that masterclass. You can access it. We're going to also drop that link below. It's free. It's a 44-minute class. And if that resonates with you and you're in a situation where you're not dealing with any preconditions, then you're welcome to book a free call, like I mentioned earlier, with our team to see if working together makes sense and we can support you in this way. But either way, the masterclass is going to give you clarity on what is actually keeping you stuck and where to focus on first and in what order and what you need to do to get yourself into the place where you're focusing on the power that you really have. So the biggest takeaway that I hope you're going to get from this share today is that you have more power than you think you do. And you find this power by bringing your attention and energy back to yourself. And while that may feel really unsatisfying at first, it's actually the single most empowering thing that you can possibly do. It doesn't mean taking all the blame onto yourself. It just means getting in touch with the reality of what we actually have the capacity to change and not change. And the level of empowerment that I felt from that is something that I really want everybody to experience. So focus on you, detach from outcome, show up according to your highest values and your goals and your life dreams, of course, not your partner's, but what are yours. Show up in a way that you are proud of day in and day out, and then get ready to be surprised, because the work that you put in is the work that you get back. And the results that you get back are directly correlated with the amount of energy that you put into this inner work. So keep the faith and know that you are worth the effort. That's it for today. If you like my content, please take a second and either like this video or subscribe to my channel, or both. That will help us reach the people that really need to hear this stuff.